how do you know the difference between playing from your heart versus playing from knowledge? That's a great question. How do you know the difference between playing from your heart versus playing from knowledge? I don't think you can play from your heart until you have the prerequisite knowledge. That's what I think. There are a lot of great players that can just play by ear. And I suppose by playing by ear is like playing from the heart. But I think there's actually three different things going on when you talk about somebody is playing like that in this context. So there's the prerequisite knowledge of what's the song, how does the song go, what's the harmony, what notes sound good and bad. I'm not even saying you need to know theory in this context, but it's just what notes sound good and bad, which you can figure out by plunking down a chord and play every note and see which notes sound good and bad. You don't need to know anything about theory. That's like playing from your heart and from your ear, right? This one sounds good, this one sounds tense, this one sounds bad, this one sounds great. So you find pitches that you really like against a certain bass note or against a certain chord quality. And so then once you have the knowledge of those things, and then you have the knowledge of the song form, all of that stuff, maybe you have some knowledge of the context and language around the type of music you're playing. If I play a bebop solo on a Bruno Mars song, it's going to sound weird, right? Just like if you play a Louis Armstrong vocabulary on Giant Steps, it also sounds weird. So you got to have the context, the musical context, the era, the style, all that stuff dialed in from your knowledge. And then it becomes second nature. So that's the part where it becomes like your heart or your ear. It's like it's second nature. You're not thinking about it anymore. I think one thing that happens, and I talk to my students about this all the time, with trombonists in particular, and I think anyone that plays a wind instrument more so than rhythm section instruments, is that you don't practice things enough to become second nature. You can't think of all of the notes of the major scale at once. Like you think about them one at a time because you perceive them as a sequence. But if you play them on the piano, you could play all 7 notes at the same time. And so you know them all as like a pitch collection. So what I mean by that is like you have to zoom out as an individual note player and start to see everything as groups and groupings of notes and groupings of pitches and be able to know what they are without thinking about them. So that could be recognize them orally or from knowing what it is or some combination thereof. And everyone is going to exist on a spectrum of like how good of perfect or relative pitch they have versus how good of ear they have versus how much knowledge they have. But the more you do it, the easier it gets, regardless of how good of perfect pitch you might have or bad relative pitch. But you can't really play accurately and contextually without having some knowledge. And you can't play from your heart if you're thinking too much about the knowledge. It has to become second nature. So that's number one. It has to become second nature. And then you have to be in a position to be able to express yourself because you know that stuff and you're not thinking about it anymore. So you learn it all and then you forget it and you play from your heart, because music to me that is like seeking perfection is different than and has a different goal than music that's seeking to have expression and creativity and soul. This is a good way to put it, I think. And vibe, whatever word you want to use. But like perfection, execution, soul, vibe is over here. Can you do it both at the same time? Of course. That's what makes some musicians so great, is that they have great technical execution and wonderful expression. And then when you put it together, it makes something magical. So that's what I'm always thinking about, is developing both and coming together with the knowledge to create a really great musical moment. Not just like a solo, a musical moment.